My sister Nora and I found ourselves in a fantasy novel about choosing a husband. In her previous life, Nora read a story from her past life and chose the protagonist of the novel, a tentacled monster. I chose a minor character, a vampire. Unexpectedly, the tentacled monster lost the battle due to a lack of mental strength, but the vampire I chose became powerful and became the new lord. When Nora wakes up, she has chosen a handsome vampire. I will be the vampire lord's bride in your place, she announced. I tried to hide my smile. If she wants to become a Strigoi and endure the torture of corrupted vampires, I will not stop her. When Nora underwent the Eldel blood purification procedure, she realized that she too had been reborn. Previously, she had decided to marry the Tentacle clan without hesitation, knowing that the Tentacle clan would eventually win. However, my blood was needed to enhance Declan's abilities, allowing him to fight the silver waves created by the tentacle monsters and even increasing his attack speed. After winning the war, Declan openly showed his love for me, which made the others jealous. But victory was near, and Nora, jealous, stabbed me with a silver knife. My vision gradually blurred as I watched the blood drain from my chest. She then transformed me into a human pig and imprisoned my soul for a century. He often laughed, I am the heir of the elders, do you want to compete with me? When I woke up again, Nora looked at me, who had stolen the blood purity technique, and said with a triumphant expression, Sister, I am the only one who can become the Vampire King's wife, and I realized that I didn't know, I understand. I was also reincarnated. I nodded obediently and let her decide everything. As the head of the family, my father said with a heavy heart. Fiona, as an heiress, you have to marry into a clan of tentacle monsters. Marry a vampire. You can't bear this much pain, I laughed in my mind. My father always treated us differently, so why couldn't I bear this pain? A race of tentacled monsters defeated the vampires, and they are trapped in darkness. Eventually, the two sides reached peace. We, the ancients, have the technology to strengthen the power of both sides. To survive in this chaotic world, the daughter of the head of the family must marry for convenience. Everyone knows that after the wedding, a new war will begin. Even though we remain neutral on the surface, my father supports the tentacled monster's victory. This marriage of convenience is doomed to be unfair. Nora immediately consoled her father. Don't worry, Dad, I am the heir to the spiritual family. Nothing will happen to me, my father scolded angrily. Is it possible to treat the daughter of a concubine this way? I couldn't bear it and asked coldly. I didn't ask her for this, so why should I thank her? Fiona exclaimed, took out a whip and hit me. Dad, are you like this? Please kneel down and apologize immediately. I felt a burning pain in my back and a hot liquid flowed out of me. As a child, Fiona would hit me or scold me whenever I had minor conflicts, but my father always turned a blind eye. My father pointed at me and scolded me, saying, you were born with a low status, just like your mother. If you weren't useful for marriage, I would have killed you long ago. I bit my lip and remained silent. Nora, you have no idea how much I suffered in my past life. If you are willing to endure hardship, I will make you endure hardship. Nora was only aware of Declan's obvious kindness towards me, but she did not know that he was using me to gain the Elder's trust. He forced me to practice the Eldar blood art, making me bleed endlessly. He created capsules with my blood and gave them to his generals, successfully destroying many tentacle monster strongholds. Also, Declan had bad intentions, and when he was in a bad mood, he would lock me in the dark and gloomy basement of the castle and torture me. But in this life, Nora chose Declan and I was finally free. The next day, the wedding guests arrive in a flying carriage and Declan stands in front of the carriage and teleports in the blink of an eye. Declan's pair of light and dark features is truly impressive. A vampire only loves once in a lifetime. I, Declan, promise Eldel that I will never marry again. Amidst the applause, Nora looked at me triumphantly and squeezed Declan's hand tightly. Cora, you make me so jealous. I stared blankly at Fiona. Little did she know that her difficult days were just beginning. I closed my eyes and remembered the times when my fingers and knees were impaled in dungeons filled with torture devices. If I hadn't seen his true face clearly in my previous life, I might have been fooled by Declan's lies. Fortunately, I have since purified the blood to its purest level. This has benefited the entire vampire family, and they no longer dared to torture me. To perfect this skill, she must sleep daily on a bed of ice, but for Nora, spoiled since childhood, it is not so difficult. The tentacle monsters had only a simple spaceship, and I was summoned to the spaceship without any rituals. In the dark cabin of the spaceship, 8 black tentacles spread out like a giant flower, and a black, shiny mask grew from each tentacle. I screamed in fear. The tentacles quickly retracted, revealing the face of a handsome, muscular man. His dark eyes stared at me. Are you scared? I'll never touch you again. I looked at Arthur. His eyes were cold, completely different from Declan's angry gaze, but there was no emotion in them. It seems that the Tentacle clan really doesn't understand love. I quickly shook my head and said, okay, as long as you feel comfortable, you won't have to deal with me. I wasn't really afraid of the tentacles, I was just nervous about being on a spaceship. He said, looking at Arthur's handsome face. Nora wondered why she said he was ugly in his previous life, but maybe she had only seen the sides of his tentacles. Captain, let's perform the soul contract ritual. Arthur nodded and spread his tentacles among the clansmen. I cowered in fear and looked at him warily. Don't worry, it won't hurt much. Closing her eyes obediently, she felt Arthur's tentacle slip into her clothes and wrap around her waist, slick and tight. Another tentacle pierced my chest. Finally, the tentacle touched the soft part of my chest, and a numb feeling ran through my chest. The tribesman shouted, "Yes, with her." The numbness in my legs disappeared and I fell. But Arthur's strong arms held me tightly. His eyes were fixed on the water of the pool, as deep and unpredictable as it was, he was careful. Hugged me, I carried him to the restroom and the elder prepared food for me. If you need anything, call me. Bad news. Chief, the vampire clan broke the peace agreement during a political wedding and attacked several bases. What happened in the past life happened a long time ago, and Fiona revealed the Tentacle Clan's plans. I had to do it. In the original story, the Tentacle Monster's base is badly damaged by Declan's surprise attack and Asher is mortally wounded. Fortunately, Arthur waited patiently for his opportunity, continued to grow, and eventually conquered the vampire clan. However, after entering the story, my blood helped the vampires resist the silver light, making them invincible. With this in mind, I took Arthur's hand and said, "I have a spirit stone that can help you. Please let me come with you." I drew a reporter. The base is overrun by vampire bat minions, who are devouring the Tentacle Clan. The Tentacle Clan members have been turned to stone due to a lack of spiritual power. I tried to use the soul stone, but it didn't work. Suddenly, I can't use my powers anymore. I shouted to Arthur worriedly, and he seemed to sense my mental state. However, Arthur entered the battle with 8 tentacles. I looked at him worriedly. Tentacles are very powerful in battle, but they also consume a lot of mental energy. Without my support, he wouldn't have lasted long, and indeed, he quickly died from lack of mental strength, was captured by vampires, and I was tied up. We were brought back to the castle, where Fiona was lying sexy next to Declan, admiring the scene. She looked at me proudly, and said, "Sister, what was the effect of the spirit powder I gave you? It's all your fault. You were too careless, and decided the outcome from the beginning. I had problems, so I chose a skill. But my father is the only one who has the magic powder, but he is also involved in all this." My heart sank as I felt betrayed by my father. I looked into Asher's worried eyes. Does he care about me? Maybe our soul contract made him sympathize with me. Declan looked at me, sniffed my neck, and said with a smile, "Why don't you two come serve me?" Fiona whispered quickly. "Sir, am I not enough? I am the heir of the ancients." As I chose a technique, I remembered that Fiona used a spirit stone, but was her father the only one with the spirit transformation powder? My heart sank as if I had fallen into a pit of cold despair. I could never have imagined that my father would use such methods to conspire against me. I looked up and saw Asher's worried eyes. Is he worried about me? Maybe our soul contract allows him to share my feelings. Declan approached me with a smile on his face and said, "Why don't you two come serve me?" Fiona quickly pretended to be innocent. "Your Highness, isn't that enough for me? After all, I'm the heir to the ancient clan." I know she doesn't want to help me. She was just afraid that I would help her. Declan laughed and pulled Fiona closer and bit her neck. When she cried out in pain, he casually pushed her away and wiped her mouth. Maybe Cora's blood would be better for me? Fiona immediately defended herself. "I am the heir to a pure-blooded spiritual race. Cora's blood is very dirty and will weaken your strength." Declan raised his eyebrows in disapproval and carried Fiona into the room. From inside, Declan kept us underground in a dungeon, waiting to develop a weapon against the Tentacle tribe. In his previous life, Declan knew that the Tentacle tribe could not be killed, only put to sleep. Once you have acquired enough spiritual power to resurrect, resurrection becomes inevitable. However, at that time, Fiona refused to sacrifice herself to revive the Tentacle clan as written in the book and insisted on returning home. I am the heir to the ancients. Why have I become so tired and weak? Arthur tries to free Fiona, but her new lover extracts information from her and tells her that the tentacle base has betrayed my position. The secrecy of the base is extremely important, as the tentacles often remain in stasis chambers. While I was locked in the dungeon, I discovered a huge ice sheet filled with girls of the Eldar race. Fiona encouraged Declan to take over my people and practice this method of cultivation for his benefit. I laughed bitterly and shook my head. "Oh Fiona, don't you understand? Our ancestors imprinted this custom, and only those of royal blood could master it. Every glory has its price. So, as an heir, why do you consider yourself inherently noble?" One day, Declan entered the dungeon and ordered the women of my clan to shed blood, but I spat it out in disgust. He calls Fiona over and kicks her in the face. "Didn't you say blood could be purified this way? Why is she always the same?" Fiona frowned, looking at her friends as if they were animals.